I have Brandon here. He is a PhD student at NC State. And first, I want you to talk about a little bit about what you're doing for your PhD and yourself a little bit, and then we'll talk about LUPIN. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm Brandon Huber. I'm a PhD student here at State. I work in a controlled environment horticulture lab, and we study how like LED light ratios affect plant growth and how we can optimize plant growth using those lights. I also deal a lot with CO2 and how we can use carbon dioxide in a contained system to optimize production as well.
Okay, all right, great. And like, how does that relate to, LUPIN and like things that you have going on other than LUPIN as well? Because
I'd say I've always had a passion for horticulture, and since a very young age, and that's what kind of brought me through my degree and my original bachelor's degree, and then brought me on to grad school. I first came to grad school to start plant breeding, and then from there I stemmed into controlled environment lab, where we deal with more plant physiology topics, but just a general love for horticulture, and I've always liked growing giant plants, and here we are with one of the world's largest flowering species. So it's such a pleasure to have this thing bloom, especially the second time. When it bloomed its first time in 2016, I never saw one before it in bloom. So it was really special to have my own flower. These plants draw people from all over the world. People from all over the world know about these plants, whether they're plant people or not. It's really a great plant to really draw people in.
Yeah. So we're a day or two from LUPIN actually opening. So let's talk about the process and how do you figure that he's gonna open? Yeah.
Right. So LUPIN's currently 78 inches tall. Huge plant. So what we do is we track its daily growth, and at some point this plant's growing 5 inches a day. This actually develops 5 inches in a 24-hour period. It's incredible. But what we're watching for the plant growth and how quick that growth is growing, and by tracking it, once we get a point where we get no growth for about 2 days, we know it's going to open. So we are on it only grew another inch overnight. So it's dropped pretty drastically from that 5 inches a day. The other thing we're looking for is this dark coloring. You can see that there's this darker pigment here. This was originally just green, like more green color, like this color. And you can see that this is the spathe here. This is gonna open up really wide, about 3 foot wide. And this is the spadix. So this is what classifies an aroid. And when we think of aroids, we think of many common houseplants, such as the anthurium, where you have your spathe and your spadix.
Our babes.
And Besos as well.
Yep. Philodendrons, that whole family. So how did you come across LUPIN?
I was visiting the Huntington Botanical Garden in Southern California close to 10 years ago now. And the Huntington's been one of the botanical gardens to bloom the Titanum many times, and one that has bloomed them. The one that bloomed them the soonest, the earliest in the U.S. So they have a nice collection of Titanums, and I happened to ask for a small bulb, and it was this little 1 pound bulb, and they let me have it, and I here we are many years later, and it's blooming, and it's blooming for the second time. It's pretty awesome.
And you said many years later, so how many exactly? How old is
this bulb? This is now 16 years old. I have its original tag from the Huntington has the accession numbers and all that for all their plants, and I have its original tag from 2003 when it was a seedling. So
super cool.
Pretty cool. And it's 16 years old. It flowered its first time at 13.
So cool. And what would you say is the life cycle of? So how many years does it take for it to flower again?
Okay. Yeah. So the first flower takes up from 7 to 13 years. Very long time. For us, that was 13 years.
Okay.
But the rebloom, the underground here is a large tuber, And with that large tuber is a storage unit which provides it the energy to flower during this time. As you can see, there's no leaf at all. So this plant is relying off of its stored energy from that bulb. So it takes a long time to build up that tuber to support this massive flower. So it takes a long time. That's why it takes up to 13 years to build that tuber. But once that tuber is built, it stays relatively large, so it can rebloom again every 3 to 7 years.
Okay, all right.
And as far as life cycle, these plants, in theory, can live indefinitely. But we've learned that, I hear from the community that generally when they flower and then are pollinated, they sometimes spend all their energy to the point where they have no energy left, and they die after that point, but leave behind many, 100, 200 seeds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But for us, we're not gonna pollinate this time. We're just gonna enjoy this bloom and hope for another bloom as soon as possible thereafter.
So Brandon is going to talk about the titanium leaf that is behind us, which is this long structure right here.
So we talked about the flower a little bit. So when the plant's not in flower, it's in leaf. It takes many years of leaves to generate this giant corm and this flower. So this is what the typical leaf looks like. This is one leaf, which is pretty crazy. But it looks like a tree, but it's actually just one leaf. And it's comprised of all these leaflets. This one's actually, you can see it's already wilting. It's actually getting ready to go dormant. These plants kind of phase in and out of dormancy, not because of the environment or anything, because they're tropical. They basically replenish their old leaf, they send up a new leaf. And the new leaf typically is bigger and bigger each time they develop. But a leaf will last up to 2 years. So being tropical, it just kind of develops this leaf, and this leaf stays for a very long time. And so this leaf will go down dormant, and then there's a big tuber in the pot, and it'll send up another leaf or a flower if it was ready.
So how do you get from the leaf to the flower? So how does that come about?
Yeah, so like with this one going dormant, this leaf will turn completely yellow and brown up, and it'll fall over, it'll dry up, and it'll separate from the corm. So it'll separate from the corm, and then under where that leaf was attached will be either the next leaf or a flower bud. And then from that, it'll come up and develop. However, these plants never have a leaf and a flower growing at the same time. They only do a leaf or a flower, or they're dormant at any given point.
Okay. All right. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
That's all the questions I have.
Yeah.
But be on the lookout for the bloom for Lupin. We're so excited. All right, thanks for